And we are back with another video in this ongoing playthrough of the game Order and Opportunity Making of the post-Cold War world order. In the previous video we had a little bit of a negotiation scenario going, and the decision has been made by the forum, so the Chinese pick up the opportunity token here. The token is placed here onto the Chinese mat and we can discard it later on to generate an additional command. We remember to draw a replacement. It's the Arabian Peninsula and there is indeed space, it goes down there. And so we continue the Chinese turn into the commands segment. China will proceed to play these three political suit cards. The consequence is taking one terror threat level here on the Chinese player mat. So how are we going to make use of these cards? So let's play China's Peaceful Rise down here in Asia Pacific to increase the Chinese political influence by 1. We will also play a second card there. We will play this card here for an offsuit action in Asia Pacific. So we have to pay a resource, going down to -2 to increase tension to 2. And then finally with the last card we simply pass to take another 2 resources. So what's going on here? What is China attempting to do? Well, one thing is China has just gained political control in Asia Pacific, and now the Chinese will be, during a future turn, able to bring a Chinese military influence into the space. The condition for authoritarians to place first 2 of their military influence in the space is that they already control it. Well, China now does control it, so the next move could be to bring Chinese military influence into the space with the US military influence here, which sets up so-called strategic posture contest. This will happen here once we get into the globalization phase. It's the 3rd segment here where the contest will happen. I think I've talked about this in a previous video, but basically what will happen is China and the US contest here who is sort of holding a military posture advantage in the broader region. So Chinese are here challenging the US preeminence there, and resources can be spent, and then dice will be rolled, both sides roll, and if the Chinese come out on top with their modified die roll, then the democracies will lose a victory point. The concept of the game is that the authoritarians are very much at the challenging power, and if they manage to successfully challenge the democracies, especially in the military realm, then the democracies may lose VPs there. So this is what the Chinese are up to here in the Asia Pacific, but it's not quite yet there that far, so the US has a reaction. So what China is up to with tension here is that they're looking to play the international condemnation horizon event here at some point during the future, which will trigger the War of Ideas check, and this will shift each space with 2 levels of tension to authoritarian. So at this moment it's Asia Pacific that is shifting. We had that situation over here in the Balkans earlier, where they already shifted to authoritarian. And so here the War of Ideas track will then shift accordingly if a space shifts to authoritarianism, and then eventually here are the victory points to be earned for the authoritarians. So this is the Chinese ultimate aim, to introduce their form of governance around the world. But we are not quite that far yet, so it's the US turn. And before we go there, we remember to award the US 1 legacy point, as was part of the deal with the Chinese. So we put the legacy point marker down here. It shows the 1 victory point marker there, so it's a value 1. Could also be a value half, but we promised the value 1 legacy point. And so the US turn starts, and it's the development segment. We draw a card, and it's the polarization check. Okay, let's fly over here to the player mats to have a look who's got any levels of polarization to deal with. And it's the US only with 1 level of polarization. Okay, and we remember US has no resources, so they cannot modify the die roll. What about the hand? There is not that card in there that allows them to avoid a check. The American Dream card, it's somewhere there in the draw deck, I presume. So the US has no option but to roll and see how this goes. So let's go and grab the dice. So here we've got the white die, and now it seems like a simple die roll. US needs to roll anything but a 1. So let's go and roll a 3. Okay, so that's good. It's amazing how often people seem to be able to, including me, be able to miss that die roll, but US is okay. So we can set the check card aside. And we continue to US turn to the opportunities. I can see here 2 levels of US political influence and Assad regime ready to talk to the Americans there, so the US simply picks up the opportunity there. Like this. This also moves the pivotal event marker by 1 level here. It starts at 0 here on the track, so it can only move up. Once the marker is here, then the resolving power may decide the direction. Which reminds me that we forgot to move the marker here in Europe as the Chinese resolve the opportunity. So China will definitely want to move the pivotal away from scoring, since if we look at the map spaces here in Europe, we can see NATO is in control here, so there either the US or the EU will gain a victory point from the pivotal event scoring. Here in the Baltic states, EU will gain a victory point, and in the Balkans it's the US. So it's very much in the Chinese interest to not trigger the color revolution's pivotal event here. So that's why we decided to move the marker away from scoring. And as with the Chinese, we remember to draw a replacement for the drawn opportunity, and again it's in the Middle East, so Gulf states gets 1 such marker. And so we move into the US command segment. This is the US hand here, so we've got military cards. We will remember that we want to use the War on Terror, and in particular the event effect here as the first card of the first command, which we are just now doing. Resolve a world event, and of course we had this world event here to resolve. The dilemma here is that so we will have to nominate the military suit, and if we nominate even just 2 cards, then our world order contribution will decline, and we just spend some resources to show up the democracy's world order standing here. So if we dominated those cards, then the US contribution would decline. The alternative is to just simply nominate 1 military suit card and just use this event effect here. But that's of course in a way suboptimal play, because you could nominate up to 3 cards and take the consequences. From 1 card you wouldn't have any consequences. Unfortunately, when we look at here the cultural suit card, of which we have 2, there isn't that event effect available on those cards. And there are other issues to discuss, such as Bin Laden, but more on this in the forum on Board Game Geek. So with that, let's close this video and hear your thoughts on what's the next US move going to be.